Okay, it's March the 28th. I want to kind of address the issue of a bill which you know as H.R. 1, or as it goes to the Senate now, where it is as S1, which is it purports to be a voting rights bill. It's supposedly a good thing for allowing people to vote. Although, first of all, I don't see there's any real problem with voting rights in this country anyhow. Voting is fairly easy, and there really is no suppression. I mean, for instance, a lot of criticism has been laid at this recent Georgia law, and the fact of the matter is, though, is that the African-American vote in Georgia is higher than the white vote on a per capita basis, as an example. So I don't see where this voting suppression claim really comes from. But and I think, but let's get into what is an H.R. 1, which I think is the main thing we want to address here. Now, which is basically, it's a whole series of changes which are quite strange in some ways. That clearly, I think they have a thrust. First of all, it bans the requirement of a voter ID at the polling place. Okay, and that's a big one, I think, which is a requirement in probably a majority of states now. And why would you do that? What good purpose would that be? And the other thing that's sort of in it, which is very important, is that it also requires access to mail-in balloting. In other words, I think it's basically a shall issue basis as opposed to for some special need like your travel or illness or something. So that's another aspect of it that's very important. And it also is a substitute for the idea of signing an affidavit in lieu of an ID. But the problem with that is, of course, when you're dealing with voter fraud, people voting dead names and people that they know have moved out of state or something's names and it's a fraudulent, is that of course they might very well sign an affidavit, but who knows who they are since they're not going to sign the right name, right? So that's another aspect of this thing that gets into this whole play. But there's a lot else in this. One of the strangest things in it is the requirement to register 16-year-olds. I mean, why do we want to register people down to the age of 16? That seems to be rather strange to me, as an example. And the question is, how do we know they won't vote without voter ID requirements? That's another thing. So you've got a lot going on there. But the other, I think the harvesting is a key issue, because if you have at-will paper ballot, mail-in ballots that are out in the community, and if people are out there harvesting the ballots, how do we know who really voted the ballot anyhow? Maybe somebody didn't really even care and just gave it to somebody. I don't want it. Or maybe it was stolen out of a mailbox, for instance. And without some kind of voter ID situation, hard to know. Now, I understand that this Georgia law, everybody's criticism, has a very good idea, which I think we ought to get away from signature verification, which is sort of subjective anyhow, and go to something like, I think what they're doing is putting the ID number on the envelope or whatever. In other words, the verification is by the number of your state ID number, driver's license or state ID card, not by a signature, which is more subjective. And that way, if you really aren't, if it isn't the right person, they presumably wouldn't have both the ballot and their ID at the same time. That would be a very rare occurrence. So that would give you a lot of security without any real burden. And it would also be a lot more objective to evaluate. You know, you wouldn't have people going, well, I think that looks like the right signature. Well, I'm not so sure, you know, that kind of thing. The other thing is rather, I think, unconstitutional in it, and I did notice that they do have a severability clause, just in case, is the idea of basically taking away the state legislatures the right to do apportionment of congressional seats and to basically require the establishment of some kind of commission to do it. Now, that all sounds well and good if you assume this commission is objective, and again, what are the objective standards anyhow? So the result you'll get is, and I suspect that you're going to get a lot of Democrat and liberal influence on these kind of commissions that are going to be kind of clear cut, you know. And of course, being on whatever favors the Democrats in a particular time period is probably what they're going to support at the moment. And I guess at the moment, the reinforcement with the state governments doesn't look as good for them as it might have looked in some other times, where they were the ones doing things. The other thing is that there are restrictions on the purging of voter rolls of people that have died or moved, and there's all kinds of restrictions on this. And I'm like, first of all, I don't think that many people have been purged illegitimately. And the second thing is that that you have to consider is that there is you can cast a provisional ballot in those scenarios where that has happened. So again, I think that is one of these deals that's sort of a big red herring issue that Democrats like to bring up, but it's not real. But at any rate, they're continuing to push these ideas in this bill, and of course, it's going to come up for a vote in the Senate. Well, we don't know if it's going to come up for a vote or not. I mean, right now, I think that they clearly will be met with a Republican filibuster. It won't pass the Senate unless they end the filibuster. And, of course, that's a big push on that, and perhaps one of the big motivating ideas that they have on that issue. So, at any rate, I would urge everybody to contact your senator to oppose S1, particularly if your senator happens to be a Democrat. Because I think that if you could even get one or two Democrats to back off from a bill this radical, then the whole issue of the filibuster and everything else would become more of a moot point, and it wouldn't be raised to the level it would be if they really see this as a must-pass bill. I don't know. The other thing I would say on a lot of these issues, like the state bill and so forth, like in Georgia and some of these others, is these are all going to be subjected to court challenges, of course. And the Democrats have done pretty good, at least in the last election cycle, with their court challenges. So I think there's the need to make, really sweeping legislation here is kind of dubious. Another thing I think is going to be quite objectionable to a lot of people is it has elements of public financing of campaigns in it. And that has been generally opposed by most people to use public tax money to fund campaigns. And yet, here again, that's in the bill. So apparently, even though, ironically enough, the Democrats swamped the Republicans in contributions in the last elections, yet they still need more money somehow. Well, at any rate, I think that kind of summarizes a lot of things that are wrong with this bill, and I think we need to be pretty active in opposing it. Because I think that, in a sense, if we can convince people that the bill itself is unneeded and undesirable, they'll be less likely to take radical measures to get it passed. And last I've heard, it looks like at the moment the Senator Manchin and Sinema are still holding firm on the filibuster. There's probably a few others. So I wouldn't give up hope at this point. We don't know what's going to happen as time goes forward. This is the ongoing challenge I guess we face. And by the way, if you like these videos, remember to subscribe and to give me a like, and those help, as I say, with the algorithm to get more people randomly getting them on YouTube. And if you have any comments, please make them. I'll be interested to see what people think. I'll end this for now.